All right, hey friends, here with a very special guest. His name is Luke. Okay, and what we're going to be doing in this chat is just having a conversation as to Luke's experiences being a student here at McMaster University. Okay, he's also super involved in the nuclear energy industry and has a lot of industry experience as well. And just overall, very well-rounded student who is making some huge impacts in the young generation nuclear space as well. So thank you so much, Luke, for coming out, or thanks so much for hosting me at McMaster.
Of course, yeah, it's a pleasure. Happy that you could come out, see the reactor earlier in the day, but happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Well, I guess, just to start off, why don't you introduce yourself and kind of talk about some of your experiences in the nuclear energy industry. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, great. So my name is Luke. I am in the engineering physics degree here at McMaster, engineering physics and society. So what that means is engineering physics is kind of a mix of different areas in the engineering field. So you can take specializations such as optical communications, LEDs and lasers, photovoltaics. And for me, what I'm doing is nuclear systems, nuclear engineering specifically. So I'm in my 6th year of engineering physics and society, and I've had 30 months of co-op experience in that time. I got pretty lucky in terms of those co-op experiences, met a lot of great people like Osama, and got a real chance to apply my degree and what I've learned here in the workforce. Got to build some really great connections and really test my skills out there in the real world. So after university, I have a job lined up. I'm really excited to get right into it. Also here at McMaster, we started up an NAYGN chapter here. For those of you that don't know what NAYGN is, it's North American Young Generation in Nuclear. There are over 100 chapters across North America, and we are one of the few university chapters here. And what we do, a part of this nonprofit organization, is really energize the future of nuclear workers by offering professional development, networking, communication, public outreach, and really bringing our focus here at McMaster is bringing the employers to the students to kind of demystify working in the nuclear industry. Many people think it's daunting, but once you get that foot in the door, it opens a large array of possibilities. So that's a little bit about me and my time here at Mac.
So when you're meeting with your peers and classmates and you're sharing this industry experience, you're sharing some of the things you're working on in terms of NAYGN, what are I'm sure you kind of share that passion and get other students passionate about the nuclear energy industry as well. So what are some of the top questions that students usually ask you?
Can I work in the nuclear industry? As an engineering physics student specializing in nuclear engineering, very easy for me to say yes to myself and other people in my program. But if you're in mechanical engineering, electrical, civil, et cetera, even not in engineering, like I said, people think it's unattainable. They think it's this behind the curtain industry that you need to take courses on to work in it extensively. So it's really, that's the largest question is can I work in it and how? So as a part of NAYGN, it's kind of bridging that gap between students that don't yet know about the possibilities of this really rapid growing industry that we're in right now.
It's great that you're bringing that level of transparency, right? I think it was really cool attending the NAYGN conference, the regional conference that your group hosted or played a part in hosting. So that was a really fun event. So maybe we can show some pictures from that event up there as well.
For sure.
And I think another question that I have genuinely is, I have an undergrad in nuclear engineering, so that's what I studied. But I've always wondered what you study in engineering physics. So could you tell me a little bit about the engineering physics program, your experiences, and also how do you specialize in engineering physics, and would you recommend that?
Bias is yes, I'd recommend it. You have really open season when it comes to job opportunities since we are in a really rapidly growing field. What engineering physics has been for me has largely been nuclear. like I said at the beginning of this, you can also go into photovoltaics, lasers and LEDs, optical communications. We like to call it, build your own pizza. So you're not stuck in a funneled degree when you're in engineering physics. You can choose engineering courses like I have. I'm taking some electrical engineering courses. I'm taking some mechanical engineering courses. But to specialize, I'm also taking one of 6 or 7 nuclear-focused engineering courses. And what that means is I've learned about fusion, nuclear engineering, reactor physics, each of those topics going into some more detail on every level. And then, of course, we have the nuclear reactor here on campus, which Osama toured today, and I'm a tour guide there myself. We got to do nuclear labs there. So that involves using those neutrons from the research reactor in our labs to see how they interact with different types of material. And we also get to observe and see how xenon poison works when we turn on a reactor to reach criticality in the morning. So that was another one of our labs, which is very interesting to do.
Wow, no, that's honestly, that's an ocean's worth of like knowledge and experience that you're getting there. So that's pretty awesome. Tell us a little bit about your experience, like being a tour guide for the McMaster Reactor. Like I know it's one of the most powerful neutron sources in Canada, right? For those that don't know, quick fun fact. What are some of the reactions that you get from people, and what are some of the highlights of like working there? Like what are some of the fun things that you've experienced?
So the majority of the tours that I've hosted are for grade 9, 10, 11, 12 high school students, mainly 10, 11, 12. And it's interesting to see how little they know about nuclear energy. I'm also doing an inquiry project about nuclear energy. Side note here, nuclear energy in the different curriculums across the different provinces in all of Canada. Ontario, suited, as you would expect, is the best in terms of how much they teach about nuclear. But even when we have grade 11, grade 12 students come into the reactor, they don't know much about it. So it's really fun opening their eyes about how nuclear works, breaking that down into really understandable terms. That's not this behind the curtain technology that you have to be a genius to understand. Breaking that down, showing them what the possibilities of nuclear is, showing them how we can work with this technology, how we have been working with this technology for over 60 years at McMaster even, and then kind of transitioning our research reactor here to the power reactors we have in Ontario as well, and kind of showing them that it's not something to be afraid of. It's that you can be in the reactor, you won't grow an extra limb just by going on a tour, and it's really great to see their attentiveness and them asking questions, wanting to learn more about nuclear, and then potentially, since they're in grade 11, 12, they ask about what programs to go into, and having nuclear as a job opportunity for them that they can think about when they go into university is something that I know that is great, because that'll just help us grow even more as an industry, and we'll need it for climate change.
Absolutely. Like one thing that I was curious about is when I saw the bluish glow, the Cherenkov effect. For those that don't know what it's called, coming out of those reactors, like it's quite the sight to see, right? And even for me, even though I studied it and part of the industry, it's like, wow, like this is incredible, right? What are the kids usually like? What's the first thing they usually say? Like, what's the first reaction that people usually have when they see a nuclear reactor in a pool?
Is the water blue, or is that a glow? They don't, and then it's, what is that glow? Why is it glowing? Like Cherenkov radiation, I'm in there a handful of times a month doing tours, and I never get bored of it. It's so fun to see. That's their main question is about the blue glow, and then also you always have somebody ask about accidents as well. So I'll address that when they bring it up. But it's really the curiosity questions are being asked during the tour rather than the typical waste and accident questions. They're more focused towards, oh, how does this technology work, rather than those defensive questions that get asked.
Nice. No, that's good to know. That's good to know that, kids at that age are genuinely curious, right, about the technology. Tell me about like some of your general highlights in your undergrad at McMaster University. Like, in terms of just being here for 6 years, well, 4 years, but 2 years on co-op and internships. What are some of your highlights, like your best top experiences?
Okay. Keeping this to an academic point of view here, I guess being in this room right now, a lot of friends have been made in here. This is where we're at right now. It's called the Quantum Tunnel. This is an engineering physics department room specifically for us. We get key cards to come in here. And in those first, second years of university, you're in this room with a bunch of your classmates doing assignments. You're up till 4, ordering pizza in here, getting samosas, doing little events. You can't see it, but there's Bob Ross paint nights here on the walls. This room, a lot of friends have been made, a lot of late nights. So that's, a great highlight here is the camaraderie that I experienced as an engineering physics program. And I think a reason of that is our program's super small. We have classes the size of 30, 40 tops in some instances, especially in the nuclear side of things. And then I'd say another highlight here, the reactor and technical courses, and then now in my capstone, building something that's applicable to the nuclear industry, getting to go in the student machine shop, the library Thode maker space, using resources hands-on to build something physical that will be used in the industry. That is a highlight that I think makes an impact in that sense, and I'm pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And just to build on that, like what impact do you want to make in the nuclear energy space? Like, I know you're about to graduate, 4th year's coming up. What's one of the main things in which you want to make that impact?
So I'm pretty early in my career, and I know that from talking with other people in the industry, your career in the nuclear industry is never linear. You're always going to be thrown into some other department or job, and it flows. Where a general goal that I have and a mission that I want to achieve in the nuclear industry is put reactors on the grid as fast and as cheap as possible, whether that's, not putting reactors on the grid, putting megawatts of nuclear energy on the grid. So whether that's refurbishing our current fleet, whether that's putting SMRs on the grid, whether that's putting a new CANDU grid on the grid, whether that's through licensing, project engineering, the technical side of things, safety, that's what I want to focus my career on, is getting more megawatts on the grid, because that is what's going to save us from climate change. We need to do it. Our future depends on it. That's what brought me into this industry in the first place, is the realization of the possibility of nuclear energy and how it can really transform and shape our electrification process to aid in the fight against climate change. And how that path looks exactly, I'm not too sure. I'm open to where it brings me. I'm not going to close any doors along the way, but keeping that goal in the back of my mind where I want to have an impact, I think that's just where I'm at right now, and we'll see where it takes me.
Awesome. That's great to know that you're passionate about the nuclear energy and something like climate change, right? Which I think it's impacting all of us right now, right? Like we're in January and it hasn't been snowing, right? Like you see these climate trends and it's pretty worrying. One other question that I have for you is, it's great to know that you did 2 years on, more than 2 years, 30 months on different co-ops and internships. That's something that I did as well. I did 2 years, not 30 months, but I think around 24 months on co-ops and internships. And that's something that I really advocate for, especially with younger students like that are going and studying nuclear engineering or engineering in general. I'm like, hey, get that co-op experience, right? Because although you may graduate 1 year earlier, and you may say that, okay, I'll make like maybe a couple dollars more as a full time, right? I want to ask you, what's your pitch for advising students to get their foot in the door in co-ops and internships early? Yeah.
The information you gain and the name you build for yourself when you have a lot of co-ops, whether it's in the nuclear industry or not, it propels you forward in both your knowledge of the industry and your connections that you make. And when you get to that point about, okay, well, I don't want to have a co-op because I want to graduate earlier and I want to make more money. For my case, I've had, for probably both of our cases, employers recognize your co-op experience and they'll adjust your entry pay accordingly. So I'm making a lot more off the bat than what somebody would be if they just did no co-ops. They recognize that experience, and they'll put you in a position right off the bat that has more responsibility. And honestly, for me, I was in no rush to graduate, so that could be a little bit of a bias there. When it comes to going back to class and potentially losing some of your friends that have graduated, in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. You're always going to have classmates, you're always going to make new friends, and you're always going to have that university experience. And you can be a student for longer, which is nice. You don't have as much real life responsibilities when you're still a student. You can still play that card later on down the road. But when you have that work experience and when you're actually working in the field, you get a better understanding of the industry as a whole. So you're not going into your first job blind. You know what to expect. And you know what company you want to work for a little bit more. So in your co-op terms, I know for McMaster, it's really flexible. I did two 8 months back to back, and then a couple 4 months in there as well. Pretty much all different companies. I think I did 3 different companies, and different aspects of the nuclear industry as well. So I was able to get a feel for what, if I want to go into a utility or a consultant or R&D or a vendor for that sense. And that's, it gives you a better sense as to where your first step is going to be. And those connections you make along the way are great. To say one thing about how you can get those co-ops, I am the biggest advocate, and I tell the members of NAYGN this, is you got to go to conferences. That's where you make easy connections, conferences, job fairs. Get yourself in front of an employer, because when they see a student just interested in nuclear, it's really a reverse job interview at that point. You're kind of just asking them about, hey, what's your company about? And they're kind of selling you to work for them, or they just want to get you interested in nuclear. So it's always a wholesome conversation when you go to conferences. You have that ability to act naive, to ask them, hey, what is your company about? And they'll gladly talk about it. Hey, what kind of projects are you working on? So you build the connections like that. You go around to all the booths. You get a good sense of industry as a whole. You make connections. You open doors for job opportunities, and all around. You can really go there for free as well. There's many student sponsorships available. You just apply, relatively easy, and then luckily, if you get chosen, you can go for free. And I know I didn't get to go for free my very first conference, and I invested $400 to go, and that might have been the best $400 I've spent in my life, because my very first co-op in the nuclear industry came out of that, and that door just opened.
That's awesome. No, it's great to hear these success stories, and well, tell me a little bit more about the success story, because that's something that I really advocate for as well. Is go to these conferences, shake hands, meet people, and refine your networking skills. And it seems like you did that, right? And you were successful at that. So share with me the success story of like getting your first co-op. What do you do differently that other students may have not done? Because when I go to conferences, sometimes you see those students kind of hanging out with their own friends. Yeah. Not really kind of getting out of their comfort zone, out of their small bubble, right? And meeting employers. So tell me a little bit about what you did differently and kind of what strategies you may have applied to your success.
I always had a plan. Every conference you go to, you have a plan. Whether that's to talk to as many new companies as possible, whether that's headhunting a company that you wanted to work for, which is what I did for my first co-op. Headhunted them, and you just tried to talk to them as much as possible organically, and a co-op sparked out of that because they saw the interest in me wanting to work for them. They knew I was committed to the industry because they've seen me so many times, and making an action on that plan. Like, you can have a plan and get the jitters when you're at the conference. It may be intimidating to go and talk to somebody new. I still feel that sometimes as well when I'm thrown into a completely new type of conference outside of the nuclear industry. So if I go to a clean energy conference, I'm there knowing nobody, and I'm kind of back to square one where I don't know anybody in the room. Now when I go to nuclear conferences, I know a lot of people in the room. It's a lot easier to make that first approach. But that first approach is hard at first. And it is a skill that you build upon as you continue to talk to people and make those icebreakers. It's something that you actively have to work on, and it's not a talent that people just have. Everybody goes through this, and it's just you telling yourself that you can go up and talk to people, and you see those benefits almost immediately. When you start to have that organic conversation and the words are flowing that way, and then that's how you can be successful at conferences and make the most out of it.
That's awesome. You know what's funny? It really reminds me of my kind of success story of how I got my second co-op. Oh, actually my third co-op. It was actually at the CNA conference as well. And at the time I didn't get the scholarship, right? So I made that investment too. I'm like, what? I'm putting $400 down. Let's do it, right? And what ended up happening was I actually met an ex-executive from a French nuclear company, EDF, Energy de France there. And he was working at Framatome at the time, leading some initiatives in Kincardine. And so, I spoke to him and made that connection. And he's like, hey, you should come up to the Bruce and you work with us. So that was like my success story, which it was like, oh, shoot. It was so, it's actually very similar, right? And I'm pretty sure we met at the conference too, right? Yeah. I don't know what year that was, like maybe 2019?
2019, 2019 was.
Yeah, we were lucky, with pre-COVID and those opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. And then once it moved online, it got a lot harder to get those conferences and execute those plans. But now that we're back in person, everybody's eager to be back in person and get to talking to students. The industry is growing more now than ever, and all employers, I'm speaking from experience, applying to jobs, full-time jobs, co-ops, they realize that they need more people, and it's a competition now. So there is a lot of interest for students when you go to these conferences. I would say more important than ever is to go there now because industry is rapidly growing.
Absolutely, yeah. And the link below, check out CNA conference. Not sponsored by CNA, by the way. No. If you do want to sponsor me, you can, but that's optional. And just pulling on that thread a bit, Luke, I want to ask you more about NAYGN, North American Young Generation in Nuclear. It's a bit of a mouthful for those in the industry. I know folks always say NAYGN, NAGYN, and they're always mixing up the acronym. Yeah. But it's a pretty cool organization, and I know you're actually a chapter. So Luke is a chapter lead here, right? Which is a great leadership position at the university. And tell me a bit about your experiences with NAYGN.
Yeah, so NAYGN, we develop leaders to energize the future of nuclear. We have 4 pillars: professional development, knowledge transfer, networking, and public information. So here at McMaster, we try to hit all of those pillars. We bring employers to the students here through industry nights. We have one actually this month. We're bringing 6 different employers to the campus, each giving a 10-minute presentation about what they do. And then we have a networking section afterwards. We also do public information events on campus. So like setting up a booth, pretty much just talking to people on campus about nuclear, seeing how they're interested, seeing if they've visited the reactor on campus, stuff like that. So really just getting the word of nuclear out there and answering people's questions. And then we also host some social events here. So nuclear trivia night. We do tours of the McMaster Reactor. We'll get together, eat some samosas, play some card games, build that camaraderie here as a club. And really NAYGN for me started when I was in my third or second year, and moved up the executive team to now president. And honestly, it's been a great icebreaker at conferences, as well as just leading a team outside of work, and building those connections with your coworkers and your fellow students. And it's just really a fun thing to do, to put on these large events that'll benefit other students looking to get jobs, and ultimately the nuclear industry as we get more people working for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's great to know that you're so involved on campus and really giving back, right? Giving back to the school community, right? And really passionate about that. Tell me a little bit about Atomic Ambassadors. I know you're also part of that program. So do you want to share a little bit more about your experiences there and how you find that?
Yeah, so I got into Generation Atomic through NAYGN. One of the NAYGN events I heard about Generation Atomic. Rather than going to nuclear-specific conferences and kind of just building your own network and preaching to the choir in a sense, what the Atomic Ambassadors program does, that Generation Atomic is leading, is what we do as ambassadors is we will go to conferences outside of the nuclear industry. So I've gone to a renewable energy conference. You go to general clean energy conferences, business conferences. You have executives outside the nuclear industry, excuse me, that will play a role in ultimately funding it, putting it on the grid, making those external decisions to be the kind of supporting framework to put nuclear on the grid. As when we go to these nuclear conferences, it's more of a technology focus, like what can we do to make ourselves better? But when you're going out to these clean energy conferences, you're advocating for nuclear, you're letting people know about nuclear energy as a whole, what it can offer, and ultimately answering questions that they have, that they're just curious about nuclear, and letting them know what the true facts are, and changing their mind at the end of the day. It's maybe not getting that person to be a hardcore nuclear supporter where I am or you are, but it's moving the needle a little bit. Every conversation at these clean energy conferences, you want to move them a little bit more towards nuclear. You're never going to get that full shift right away, but the more conversations you have as a professional, they trust you as a professional. So they'll listen to you, they'll take your word, and the more that they hear about this kind of organically, you're not pushing facts down their throat either. You're just talking to them like a human being, listening to their side as well. But being a part of these conferences, going to these clean energy conferences, you feel that you're making an impact as well in that sense.
That's really cool. That seems like a really interesting experience. Going to areas where people believe that renewables will save the world, right?
Yes.
And telling them that, hey, listen, buddy, this is not the case, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about. Do you have any like fun stories from those experiences or from that conference?
Yeah, like you said, people. Some people are just energy illiterate. Like they are surrounded by people that tell them that wind and solar is the savior. They are the hope, and everything else is the high road. And really not looking beyond that. So when I talk to those type of people, it's kind of listening to them, understanding where they're coming from in their context of what they've been taught, but then kind of just, showing them the door to nuclear and opening it a bit. You're like, hey, like this is also a clean energy that is, we could, potentially work together rather than shut us out of every deal that you're a part of. We're an energy source that needs to be included in these clean energy conferences. So it's, would you like to know anything more about nuclear? Do you have any questions that you have pertaining to nuclear energy? It could be about, anything, fission, accidents, wastes, I'm your guy. And then you get that conversation going. You ask them about how the wind and solar and battery storage is currently going, and you have that conversation, and at the end of it, you can see that they're a little bit more receptive to it. But it's kind of really funny. You get to see one of those people every time that are just not with it in terms of where solar and wind can really take you on a large scale over many years that we're looking for, because we have a very, very big gap we need to fill. Just in the next 30 years in Canada, I believe we have to triple our electricity. Triple. Like this is a crazy task that we need to do. And going to these renewable energy conferences, they think it's too big of a task for them themselves, and they're kind of panicking. But they've not yet included us, which is why the atomic ambassadors and go there.
I think that's really brave of you to to put yourself out there and actually go out to one of these events, right? Because I'm sure there's people very passionate about a certain technology, and when they hear a different opinion, then they may act very differently, right? So kudos to you for actually having the courage to actually go out there and connect with these people and try to translate the benefits of nuclear to them.
Yeah, and it's not so much anti-nuclear people that are there. It's just like they're not nuclear literate. Like
They're not aware.
They're not aware. So it's you're never like met with a hard wall when you talk to people at these conferences. It's more of like a two-way conversation that they actually want to learn more about nuclear, which is surprising to what I thought it was going to be like. Don't talk to me about nuclear, but everybody that I talked to at these conferences, they had a genuine interest in it, and I think that's something that was surprising to me. Is even at this renewable conference that I went to, they were very open and curious about nuclear.
Awesome. Well, Luke, it was really nice getting the chance to chat with you, exploring McMaster University, which we're going to do soon, yes. And also learning about your experiences. I think it's phenomenal to showcase a student that is really so well-rounded in not only their career but also their academics, and then on top of that with extracurricular activities as well, right? So I think when this podcast is finished, I'm definitely going to send to my little brother to show that, hey, listen, this is a great way to to become a young leader, right, in the nuclear energy industry. So I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much. And do you have any message for those who will be watching?
Yeah, I'd say if you are outside of nuclear engineering right now, if you're in high school, really just take the leap. Try to learn a little bit more about nuclear. It's not as daunting as you think. And if you are in nuclear and want to get more involved, NAYGN, Generation Atomic, they're great ways to build your network, your knowledge, and ultimately put you on a right path for your career to work in the industry. So thanks a lot, Osama, for having me. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Awesome.